We are a group of students in the Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic at Penn Law, and we are excited to talk to you about some of the requirements for doing business in Philly. Before we get started, we'd like to remind you that this is an informational video designed by law students from the University of Pennsylvania Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic to educate viewers on the basics of doing business in Philadelphia. Watching this video does not constitute an attorney-client relationship, and none of the information presented is legal advice. While we have made an effort to provide accurate information as of April 7th, 2025, the information in this video may have changed and should not be relied on. You should contact an attorney for legal advice relating to your company's specific needs. In today's video, we're going to walk through the basics of doing business in Philadelphia. This video is designed to be useful for entrepreneurs who are interested in starting a business in Philly and want to know what requirements they need to comply with. We will be walking through some basics regarding licenses and zoning permits, and after giving a brief introduction on the topic, we will then walk you through how to use a useful tool created by the City of Philadelphia, which can help you determine what kinds of licenses and zoning requirements might be applicable to your business. We're now going to begin walking through the wizard. For today's video, we are going to imagine that we want to start a hat store. We will use this hypothetical business to see what zoning and licenses will be required. The first page asks about business type. If you don't know how to classify your business, you can browse the code list to find the description that matches your business. For our example, we're going to select retail sales and then select consumer goods, since this is the category that a hat store would fall under. After we've selected our business type, we'll proceed to the next stage, which will ask about where the business is going to be located. Once you're on the second page, you can type in the address where your business is located or where it will be located to find out more about the zoning requirements. For our fictitious example, we're going to use the address 140 South 34th Street. After typing that in, you can see that the zoning designation on the website would permit a retail store at that location. Permitted use, or existing legal use, refers to the ways the City of Philadelphia allows an owner or lessee to use their property depending on its size, location, and design. Permitted uses may vary depending on whether the property is residential or commercial. For example, if your property has a residential use, it's fine to live in and nothing else. If your property has a commercial purpose at its existing legal use, you would be able to open a store, restaurant, or other storefront in the building you want to operate in without having to do any extra work. When a proposed use of the property is permitted within a particular zoning designation, it is considered to be permitted as of right. This means that you may get a zoning permit from the Philadelphia Department of Licenses and Inspections without having to receive approval from the Zoning Board, Planning Commission, or City Council. In our case, retail sales used for selling consumer goods is permitted within our property zoning designation. We want to create a hat selling business. Since this use is permitted retail, we would be able to go straight to licenses and inspections to get a permit for opening a retail store at this address. However, retail sales for selling consumer goods may not always be permitted depending on the district. This goes for any other legal use that you may contemplate for your business. It's best to look for properties that have a commercial rather than residential or industrial designation to prevent this. This way, you'll already have a correct zoning designation and you will not have to apply for an exception that will allow you to operate, which will save you time in getting your business up and running. Retail sales and other common uses might be allowed, but sometimes only with conditions. If your project falls under a conditional use, you'll need to get a special exception approval from the zoning board. This means your planned use is technically permitted, but it still needs city approval before you go further. To begin this process, you can apply for a zoning permit through the Licenses and Inspections website, which is linked in the description box. If you input the address of the property you want and it comes up as prohibited, this means your desired use is specifically prohibited by the city within the zoning code. However, this can be remedied by applying for a variance with the Department of Licenses and Inspections. We will discuss variances when we get to this question on the permit finder. Another helpful resource provided by the city is the Atlas website. This site provides information about a property's zoning designation, permits, and more. On the site, you can search the address of your desired property. From there, you can see what the parcel of land looks like, what permits the property has received from the Department of Licenses and Inspections, what inspections the property has undergone, and how the property is zoned. Another helpful feature is that Atlas will show you the name of the businesses that were previously housed on the property, if it has a commercial zoning designation, and this can help you determine whether your business is the right fit for this particular space. Specifically, you can look at violations, if any, the property is received from the Department of Licenses and Inspections. This will help you understand what to be aware of in applying for licenses and permits, as well as normal business operations. Knowing whether your property will be the right fit, whether it has the correct zoning in place, and what possible missteps could lead to an L&I violation are all helpful in deciding where your new business should be located. If your project is prohibited at a particular location, the project may need a variance. While this step doesn't apply to our particular example since the use is permitted, it is important to understand what a variance is in case your business idea runs into zoning restrictions. In general, Philadelphia requires that any business or construction project complies with the zoning rules assigned to a specific property. These rules are in place to regulate what kinds of activities are allowed in different areas of the city, whether it be residential, commercial, or industrial. But what happens if your dream location isn't zoned for the type of business you want to open? That's where a variance comes in. A variance is a formal request to make an exception to the zoning code. It allows you to move forward with your business plan even though your proposed use isn't technically allowed in that zoning district. For example, if you want to open a retail shop in a building that is only approved for residential use, you would need to request a variance from the city to get special approval to operate your business there. This is not an automatic process, and variances are not guaranteed. To obtain a variance in Philadelphia, you must first apply for a zoning use or permit through the Department of Licenses and Inspections to obtain a zoning permit for your desired use. To do so, you must fill out a zoning use registration permit application, which can be found on the City of Philadelphia website. This is the same initial permit you would apply for if your use were allowed under existing zoning. Please note that in the case of a proposed use that is prohibited by the current zoning code, your application would be rejected. Some things to note. Variances may take time. The process includes paperwork and scheduling, which could potentially take weeks or even months. You may also want to hire an attorney or zoning consultant to guide you through the process. And lastly, there is no guarantee that your variance will be approved. If the variance is denied, you will need to find an alternative location or revise your business plan to comply with existing zoning rules. A zoning permit gives you permission to use a building or space in a certain way, such as for a store, restaurant, or office. You need a zoning permit in order to make sure that your business type is allowed in a certain area. For example, if you want to open a yoga studio, a zoning permit for a studio tells you, yes, this neighborhood allows this kind of business. After getting the zoning permit, you get the zoning license that says, okay, now you can open your yoga studio here at this address. After answering the zoning questions under the address tab, you get to the point in the system that allows you to determine what type of permits you need for your business. Once you reach this portion of the process, the first thing you need to determine is the project description for your business. This section is where you begin to dive into the details of what your business will actually do. It plays a key role in determining which permits you'll need moving forward. This is your opportunity to clearly and concisely explain your business. Think of it as a short summary that gives the city an overview of your operations. It should include what kind of business you're opening, what products or services you'll offer, and how customers will interact with your business. A strong project description connects directly to your selected project type and helps ensure your applications aligns with city regulations. This helps the city understand what exactly you're planning and ties back to your selected project type. For our example, we might write something like retail store selling large fashion hats and novelty headwear for consumer purchase. This statement tells the city that the business falls under the retail sales category, specifies the product being sold, and clarifies that it's a customer-facing operation. While the description doesn't need to be long or overly detailed, it should accurately reflect the key elements of your business. Avoid vague language like general store or small business, and be as specific as possible within 1 or 2 sentences. Once your project description is entered, the tool will prompt you to answer a few yes or no questions about your business operations. The first is whether the project includes a new business or a change in existing business operations. When you're asked this question, the city is trying to determine whether you're starting something entirely new at a given location, or if you're modifying the operations of a business that already exists there. If you're opening a brand new business, like starting a retail store where there wasn't one before, you would answer yes. Even if the space was previously vacant or used for something entirely different, a new business counts as a new project. If you answer yes, you will have to answer a few additional questions about your new business, such as whether the business sells food or beverages, which in this case it does not, or if it sells electronic smoking products, etc. On the other hand, if a business already exists at that location, and you're taking it over without changing what it does, For example, if you're continuing to run a clothing store in the same way the previous owner did, you might answer no. You might also answer no if your project is simply about renovations or minor changes to the space, but the business activity remains the same. The purpose of this question is to help the city understand whether your proposed project represents a fresh use of the space or a continuation of an existing one, as different rules and reviews may apply depending on your answer. When you're asked, would your project include construction of any kind, the city wants to know whether your business plans involve making physical changes to the property. This includes any work that modifies the structure or layout of the space, such as building walls, installing plumbing or electrical systems, or making accessibility upgrades. This is an important question because it determines whether you'll need building permits in addition to business permits. If you're planning major renovations or something new, you would select yes. If you're not doing any construction at all, just move into an existing space without making any changes, you would select no. However, if your plans involve light updates like painting, putting up shelves, or installing signage, things that don't affect the building structure, you can choose minor cosmetic work. This helps the city determine whether you'll need building permits, inspections, or additional documentation as a part of your application. Even minor works may still need require permits in some cases, so it's important to be honest and specific in your selection. Once this section is complete, the system will review all of your answers and tell you whether your proposed project is fully permitted at your chosen location. You'll also receive a customized checklist of the permits, inspections, and licenses required for your business. This will include things like zoning approvals, license applications, fee estimates, and any requirements for using licensed contractors or submitting floor plans. In short, this tool is incredibly helpful for understanding the full scope of what's needed to legally open your business in Philadelphia, and it all starts with selecting the right project type and confirming your business fits within local zoning rules. Once you get to the final page, you will be able to review a summary of the permits and licenses that you need to operate your business. You can see that if you click Learn More, it will tell you a bit more about what it is you need, how to apply, and an estimated cost for getting it. This is a really helpful tool, and you should definitely take the time to read about what you need. You can see that in our case, there's some other requirements like finding a Philadelphia licensed contractor. You can also see some useful information like how long it usually takes to review an application and what kind of fees you're looking at when you apply. This section is going to change a lot depending on specifications for your own business, so it's really important to go through and understand what it is you need. In our case, we'll talk briefly about the licenses we would need to operate. Now that we've covered how to determine your business type and confirm that your location is properly zoned, the next step is making sure you have the right licenses to legally operate your business in Philadelphia. Licenses are essential because they give you official permission from the city to conduct business activities, and different types of businesses require different licenses. Today, we're going to talk about the commercial activity license as well as the scales and scanners license. If you want to conduct business in Philadelphia, you need to obtain a commercial activity license through the Department of Licenses and Inspections. This requirement applies even if you are not operating a physical storefront within the city. If you're doing business here in any form, you will need a license. However, if you're simply engaging in a hobby or nonprofit activity, you are not considered a business for licensing purposes and you will not need to apply. The good news is the commercial activity license is free, and the application process is straightforward. You can apply for the commercial activity license by submitting your application through the Eclipse platform or in person at the Permanent License Center. Once issued, the license doesn't require renewal and is typically granted after submission. Importantly, this is the license you need to apply for first, as you will not be able to apply for other business licenses until this one is in place. If you want more information regarding the commercial activity license, you can consult the Philadelphia City website, or you can refer to Title 19, Section 2602 of the Philadelphia Code, which governs licensing requirements. The other license we'll be discussing for our hypothetical business is a scales and scanners license. This example shows how the wizard can help identify licenses that you may need depending on your business, including licenses that you may not have thought about before. For example, Philadelphia requires businesses that either use a scale or load rack meter to measure or weigh products, or use electric scanners and similar tools to get this license. Because our hypothetical hat store will be using a scanner to check out customers, we would need this license. If you're going to be operating more than one store location, You will need to apply for a license for each location where you're using a scale or scanner. While in our example, we only talked about the commercial activity license and scales and scanners license, it's possible that your business will require additional licenses to operate. You should be sure to consult the most current city regulations in order to ensure that you have the proper licenses to operate. The city website provides a variety of different resources that can be consulted, as well as contact information for different departments if you have additional questions. The last requirement that we are going to discuss in this video is the Business Income and Receipts Tax, or BIRT. As a future Philadelphia business owner, this is an important requirement to be aware of. We'll begin by discussing who must pay the BIRT, how much the BIRT is, how to file the BIRT, and where you can find more information. First, we'll talk about who has to file the BIRT. Nearly all businesses that operate for profit in Philadelphia must file a BIRT return. While the filing requirement applies to all entities, including conducting business, whether or not you will actually owe the tax depends on how much money your business makes. If you're engaged in business in the city of Philadelphia and you make more than $100,000 in gross taxable receipts in a 12-month period, you need to file the Business Income and Receipts Tax. The current rates can be found on the Philadelphia City website. The tax can be filed through the Philadelphia Tax Center. Based on your specific situation, there may be some tax credits that you can take advantage of. More information about these tax credits, as well as their eligibility requirements, can be found under the tax credit section of the website. If your business makes less than $100,000 in gross taxable receipts, then you do not have to file the BIRT. However, even if you do not owe, you should still file a no tax liability form. This form can be filled out on the Philadelphia Tax Center website. If you do not do any business in a given year, but have a commercial activity license for Philadelphia, you need to file a BIRT and tell the city that no business occurred. If you fail to file this, you might receive a notice and could face a fine. The BIRT is due by April 15th, just like normal tax day. You should make sure to stay current on paying taxes, as failure to pay on time may result in interest and penalties. Additionally, the city may revoke or suspend your commercial activity license until you become current. This will prevent you from being able to operate your business within Philadelphia. We recommend speaking with a tax advisor about your specific situation, as other taxes like the net profit tax, which we haven't covered in this video, may also apply. You can also consult the Philadelphia City website, which provides more information as well as a link to the complete BIRT regulations. We hope that today's video has been useful in providing an overview of some of the requirements of operating a business in Philadelphia. The City of Philadelphia offers many informational resources for entrepreneurs, so be sure to check out their website for more information on any of the topics we've covered, as well as additional requirements that may be applicable to your business.